4.5 major topics in this lecture: variables, arrays, objects, functions, and it's a long training kit entry. So I'm not trying to intimidate you with this because most of these things are not too crazy to grasp once you play with them a little bit. I just want to say ahead of time, don't feel nervous or scared if you don't instantly grasp everything, because this is a lot of information in tonight's lecture. The good thing about going into JavaScript is that we're going to have more of these style videos in the training kit to help you guys review. Josh and Ryan, I believe, are the ones that are doing all these, so you'll have, you know, my boss's boss teaching you. So these are a little more condensed, specific topics type stuff. So like 16 minutes on function basics instead of having to dig through like a 2-hour lecture to find where I talked about functions. So definitely, if you're struggling with any of this stuff, go through and watch these videos. They're a little more, you know, focused on the specific topic at hand. So they should make for some good review. And yeah, and just FYI, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here. So these are the things that we're going to learn in this module. We're going to learn about function declarations, expressions, arrow functions, let const var and what's different about them, object literals and object properties and methods, and arrays and array properties and methods. So I am excited, and hopefully you guys are too. So we're actually just going to start with an empty CodePen tonight. We're just going to make some code come into existence all on our own. So first of all, I'm just kind of going to explain a little bit about how, you know, how CodePen with console and all that stuff works. So disclaimer for CodePen. Sometimes CodePen does not display, you know, errors or, you know, some issues. It doesn't display everything in the console that the real console does. And when I mean the real console, if you inspect, remember remember this guy here with all the HTML stuff in it? Well, we've got a console in here too. So this is the real console. So if you're having trouble with something and it's not coming up in this console, check out this console, and there's probably going to be an error in there that you can check out. You know, most of the professional developers on my team will always have the console up here, so it's useful to kind of just get used to having it there. So I'm just going to keep it up during the lecture. So one of the big things that will be super useful for you guys, especially for debugging, is console logging. I know, I guess someone missed the link. Okay. I know a lot of folks, especially when they're starting out, are kind of hesitant to write too much code, or maybe think that it's not good to console log everything out. That's not true. Console log everywhere. I probably write hundreds of console logs every single day. So just to show you what a console log does, if I make something like var example and set it equal to hello, that's not going to show up, right? It's just a variable. It won't be able to show up in the console until we do console log example. Now we've got this hello over here. So that's how we can console log out data. We can see what's happening where in the app, and it's just super useful. You know, this is a super basic example, but as you get into, you know, as you get into more complex stuff like React and your real jobs, console logging is an invaluable skill. Benedict, yes, it's considered good practice to get rid of your console logs before you submit your stuff, because it can get pretty spammy. You know, if you've got like 50 console logs from trying to debug something and someone pulls up your code and starts running it and gets spammed by all those console logs, that might not be the best. Cool. So I just want to show you guys what a console log is and why it's useful. Before we get into actually doing some coding though, I am going to just kind of explain how JavaScript works under the hood in very basic terms. So if you remember with the less compiler, it kind of went like, we wrote our less, it went into Node to be compiled, and then it came out as CSS, right? So the way that JavaScript works is not really super similar, but sort of. So JavaScript works with something called JIT, or just in time. Basically, when we're writing something, the browser is reading it, and it uses your computer to make it work. So it does this in two passes. So on the first pass of the compiler, it basically just finds all of your variable names or all your function names or any names of stuff. So first pass runs through and finds references. Reference is a term that we'll use to refer to, for the most part, like names for now, like names of variables, names of functions, and things like that. On the second pass, it runs through and finds values. So in this example, var example would be the reference and hello would be the value. So let's do one more example here. Var test equal testing 1 2 3. Oops. Oh, and actually one cool thing. Let me shut this automatic loading off real quick. Okay, cool. So now I have to actually save it to for it to pop up. But so what do you guys think will happen if I erase this var? It won't assign and it will work. Test is undefined. Global variable. Yes, you guys are correct. So if I save it and run, it'll still run, but it's now a global variable. I'm not going to get too much into that just yet, but I just wanted to show you guys that this will work, but know that it will cause problems, so do not do this. Yeah, it's basically like exclamation important. It basically just makes your code go all over the place and really hard to manage. So try to avoid that. Cool. And so one other thing you might have noticed is that we set things equal with, or we assign things with one equal sign. You might have seen like the 2 equal signs or the 3 equal signs. Can anyone explain to me what the difference between these guys is? Boolean expressions, yep. Type coercion, good words. Equals is assignment, equals is equals. Cool, yeah. So you guys have the idea. So some people get a little confused about equals versus equals. Basically think of it as one equal sign means that you're saying this is being set to this. Try not to use the phrase this equals this. It just gets confusing with all the different equals signs. So let me do this. So this, the 2 equal signs means non-strict equality, which, that's annoying. I'm not sure why it's still running because I shut that off. So non-strict equality means that it's not type sensitive. JavaScript is a loosely typed language, which means that basically you don't set things to a string or an integer value, for example, discretely. So for some languages, you would do something like this, or you know, you might do something like var number integer equals 4. So we don't have to do that in JavaScript, right? We just write our name here and give it a value, and it kind of just does a lot of magic under the hood to make it work. It can cause some issues, but we'll get into that a little later. But essentially, so this non-strict equality means that you can do things like, show you guys a little thing. So if null equals undefined, console.log, yes. Oops, weird. So this equals yes. These things don't explicitly equal each other, right? What's happening here is basically these are both just false in basic terms. So these are non-strictly equal to each other. However, if I were to do this, it's not equal anymore. Yeah, you can use any other example, like, so if string 1 equals 1, console.log true. So it's true. I thought I shut this off. Auto updating preview. Okay, off. There we go. Cool. So that should be done. Otherwise, console.log false. And then if we throw this in here, it should log false. There we go. Got that false going there. So basically, just really make sure that you understand the difference between these 3 different types of operators. We have the assigns operator, we have the loose equality, and we have the strict equality. So these can cause you issues if you don't understand them fully. This is a great resource for a deeper explanation. I'll link it in the chat. So you guys go ahead and grab that if you would like it. But yeah, a lot of new people especially get really hung up on the equals or operators and the assigns operators. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that. Cool. Alrighty. And with the whole being loosely typed too, that means that we can also change this type of stuff, right? So if I wanted to, I could take example equals 4 console.log example, and now it's 4 down here. Let me console log this stuff out so we're not getting too much stuff. You can see where the console spam might come from. So we've got hello and 4. So up here, it's set to hello. Down here, it's set to 4. So that non-strict, loosely typed JavaScript means that we can reassign things. That's a key word, reassign. We can reassign these variables to different things and different types as well. So the next pretty important thing about JavaScript is the concept of scope, and here is where I'm going to introduce some more keywords. So we've got var, we've got const, and we've got lit. Can anyone give me a little overview of what var does? var is function scoped. var sets it globally, declares a variable, mutable, global scope. Cool. Nice words, guys. Cool. So these things are all true. So var is function scoped, mutable, and reference can be redeclared. So what those words mean is basically, if I take another example, var test, because I'm very creative. Var test equals hello world console.log test. So this is just going to run hello world, right? Yep, we've got a hello world here. However, I could do test equals goodbye, and then console log it again. Now I've got hello world, and it changes to goodbye, even though we're using the same name for a variable here. That is the property of being mutable. All that means is that you can change the value of a variable. However, we can also redeclare the reference, which is slightly different. So if I wanted to, I could say, again, var test equals, I just redeclared this. Console log it again. Now we've got these three different things, and they were all, these were all valid, obviously, when they were printed out. But now at the end here, this is the only value that exists for test. So that's the idea of mutability and reference redeclaration. You don't really want to redeclare your variables because, well, A, we don't really use var very much anymore, as most of you probably have picked up on. And B, redeclaring your variables is just super confusing. If you can imagine working on a project with even just 10 files in it, for example, which is a really small project. Imagine having 10 files and you have a variable called test in one, and then you rename it test1, and then you rename it again test2, and they're all they're all different things all over the place. They're all global variables because they're var. So you can have one global variable that says hello world that is test. You can have another one test that is I just redeclared this, and they all mean different things in different parts of the app. So it can get really confusing really fast. Yes, you guys, I'm glad that you guys realize already that var is kind of really an outdated thing. We don't really use var too much anymore. You will probably see it in your life, though. I'm sure most of you have gone on Stack Overflow and seen examples of code that have var in it. If you work somewhere with code that's older than 5 years old, then it will be full of var. The other two types of variables, const and let, didn't come into existence until the past couple years. Maybe Elijah, maybe. So yeah, just be aware. Basically, if you see var, you can probably assume that either it's older code, it's code that was written by someone that hasn't updated on the most recent way to write JavaScript, ECMAScript, however you want to phrase it. Basically, all you need to know is don't use var, but you need to know what it means if you do see it out there in the wild. So, comment this stuff out again. Oops, why did that happen? Comment this stuff out again. And then I'm going to explain const. So can anyone tell me about const? Immutable. Yep, that's one of the big ones. Immutable. Block scope. Fixed variable cannot be redeclared. Yep. Reference can't be redeclared. Cool. So we do constant variable equals I am constant. Console.log constant variable. And so we'll just get this phrase as usual, right? I am constant. However, if I try to do this, constant variable equals I am changed. Oops. I am changed. And then we console log it out again. What do you guys think is going to happen? Error. Yep. Good stuff. So we see we get the I am constant in here, which I think is actually because I didn't clear it. So let me run it again, see if it even gets there. So it gets to the I am constant console log, and then it doesn't print this one out. We can look in the console because unfortunately, like I said, the console for CodePen is a little weak. So we'll look in our actual console. We've got, let me run it again. A lot of stuff in there. Assignment, type error, assignment to constant variable. So what that means is we try to change the value of a constant variable. And because it's immutable, that means that we cannot do that. It's just against the rules. You're not allowed to. So this will never work. Another thing that will never work is doing this. This is when we try to redeclare the reference. So this will not work either. See, it didn't come through. I'm not sure why it didn't throw an error because it definitely should have, but there it is. Okay, I guess I had to refresh. Uncaught syntax error, identifier constant variable has already been declared. So it will not let you redeclare, it will not let you redeclare a constant. Where are you, console? Okay, there you are. Cool. And yes, it gets mad. It gets very mad. It doesn't even print out this first one. Do you guys know? Do you guys maybe know why that would be, that it wouldn't even print out this first one? First pass. Yep, that's right. So remember, the compiler, first pass, it goes through and grabs all the names. So it found this name twice, saw that it was a const, and said, nope, we're not doing that. So the compiler basically is catching your mistakes for you. It's really useful. You get used to actually being happy when you see errors like this because, you know, this is a really easy to understand error, right? Okay, identifier, constant variable has already been declared. Oh, oops, I put const here. I can't redeclare a const. Oops, I guess I shouldn't do that. So it's just a really good way of catching your mistakes for you. So don't be upset when you see errors and stuff like that, because it's actually good. Otherwise, you'd be lost forever. Cool. And the last one here is let. So what are some things about let? Block scope. Mutable. Cannot be redeclared. Yep. Ref cannot be redeclared. Cool. So as an example here, we'll use non-const equals I can change console.log non-const. And then, you know, we'll run it just to see. Get rid of that. I can change. Cool. And then we can do non-const equals I did change. So now we get both. So this is a variable that we can use for stuff that we want to change. So you know, it's pretty useful. However, the one thing about it is you can't do this again. You can't redeclare it. So if I try to redeclare it here, it's going to throw an error that says it's already been declared. So just make sure that you're watching out for if you accidentally try to redeclare stuff, or reassign variables that can't be reassigned, and things like that. So the other cool thing about these different types of variables, I'll introduce you guys to scope now. Okay, let me re-explain the reference problem with var real quick. So basically, references are they're the names, but what they actually are is they are points in memory where that information is stored. So basically, you're taking memory and you're saying, okay, this memory it has this value to it. So basically, you're taking, you're taking a piece of memory saying, okay, this has this value, and then you're retaking that memory and saying, okay, no, it has this value. Basically, you're just using tons of memory to do weird redeclarations. You don't want to do it mostly because it's just really confusing to work with, but it can also be memory issues. So just main thing is just don't redeclare your vars. Don't use vars in general, though. Yeah, just stay away from them. So I'm going to show you guys now what scope is. So I'll do it first with var, just so you guys can see what I mean by global variable. So if I uncomment, I'll uncomment this one, test hello world. Yes, exactly, Benedict. So if I do this, clear this out, console.log test. What do you guys think will happen when I press run? Hello world, it'll work. Cool. Yep, we've got the hello world here. So when we see these curly braces here, what this means is this is basically its own little section of code. Code section. And out here is global section. This is the actual phrase that you would want to use is global scope, local scope. Do vars go down the scopes from where they were declared, not back up? Actual vars like test are global, so you can access them anywhere, which I am going to demonstrate further here in a sec. So if I take this, comment this one back out, put it back in here. So this will work because it's all in the same local code here. And then also, this will work, even though they're outside of the code of each other. So var can be declared in a local section and still be referenced from outside of it. That's what we mean when we say a global variable. You can basically grab it from anywhere. So that's kind of how var works with that. Let me get this boy out of here again. And now we're going to try the same thing with, where is const? So let me undo this guy. What do you guys think will happen here? No, nothing. Undefined, it won't log. Error. Ooh, you guys are in for a surprise. It's gonna log. So what this means is, you can think of it almost like CSS, where we've got that cascade, right? So the outside is less specific, the inside is more specific. So we can go down with this less specific thing and reference it inside this more specific thing. That's kind of the way that I think about scope. I'm not sure if that's helpful for you guys, but that's just how I personally think about it. So then, obviously when we go in here, this will run as well. But what's going to happen if we do this? Error. Now it won't. So yep, threw an error. What do we got here? It's annoying. I'm not sure why it's not popping up in my big window. Reference error. Constant variable is not defined. Why do you guys think that is? Block scope, right? Yep, awesome, block scope. So what block scope really means is that stuff that is declared in here that is not global stays in here. So I'm not able to reference this because essentially the compiler goes through each of these blocks of code, finds all of the references in it and says, okay, that references things that are inside of this block of code. It doesn't reference everywhere. You know, it doesn't know that this, it doesn't understand basically that we're trying to reference this outside. Let me see. They can all be globally scoped, right? That's an interesting question. So you can, I'll answer that later actually. You can have like a semi-global variable if you just like declare it out in like the most the most global area. So if I like you guys saw, if I declare it out here, it's fine, and I can pull it from here. I could pull it in even levels deeper, right? I could do it in here instead, and this would still run. If it's gonna go. Run. I'm constant. See, we can go infinite levels down if we want, right? So it really just depends where you declare things. You can see how this can get really confusing really quickly, though. Scope is probably one of the toughest things to grasp at first. Just like specificity with CSS, it'll take you some time to get used to how it works. But after a while, it's just like old hat stuff. You'll be able to understand instantly when you see those undeclared variables or reference errors or things like that. You'll understand, oh, I must be scoping something incorrectly. And then you'll be able to kind of debug a little easier from that. Cool. And then, so now you guys have seen how constants and vars work. So I'll do lets as well. So let non-const. So this one will run just fine. That's fine, right? If I wanted to do this, and then non-const equals, I changed. What do you guys think is going to happen here? Both will happen. It'll be different inside. Right. So when I run it, it's going to run in that order, right? The least specific will go first. So we're console logging out this one first, and then this more specific one comes out second. So, yep, top-down order basically. So that's kind of just like an intro to the different variable types and basic how scope works. Cool. So does anyone have any questions so far about scope or equality operators or assignment operator or any of these variable types? Not currently. That's good. What if I ran the console log outside of line 60? Like right here? Well, let's see what happens. it retains the change. So we changed it in a more specific place. So now it's going to be changed wherever. So I could do console.log non-const out here too, and it'll be the same. Here. So it's changed. And yeah. We've only played with strings so far. Okay, yes, I will do some other data types here in a minute. Can I show what happens if we comment out the top console log? Sure. So I probably should have cleared that first, but so now we just get the 3 I changed. I'll do it so that's a little more clear. We just get I changed. It's important to know though, it still equals I can change in this code block. It doesn't automatically get changed to I changed until it reaches this code. So if I had some reference to it somewhere else that happens before this, I would get this value instead. So CSS down top, JS is top down. I'm not sure that I understand that comparison, but whichever way it helps you to think about it is how you should think about it. I'm not gonna say which way specifically to imagine it in your own head. Any more questions on this type of stuff, guys? Okay, cool. Looks like everyone's doing all right so far. I am going to throw on a quick little break, let you guys get some of that juice flowing in your brains. Be back in 5 minutes. Welcome back, guys. I saw a question from Benedict. I'm going to address that real quick. Let me grab this over. That's annoying. So I'm going to link this in chat as well because some of you might be confused about it. This is about reference and value. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but basically there are some things that are they're assigned to a, so primitives are basically just assigned to whatever value they have. More complex things like objects, arrays, they are assigned by reference. And so what this looks like is, this is probably a little bit much for you guys to look at right now, actually, but I would suggest checking this out later tonight after I have explained about arrays and objects. So yeah, check out this reference if you're confused about that stuff still. Cool. There we go. So let's get back into it. Does anyone have any more questions before I move on that came up during the break? Cool. Looks like we're doing okay. We'll give Orlando a second. It was great. Just great. Cool. So let me comment this stuff out again. Okay, I guess that block is just going to be there. Lots of commented out stuff in here. You guys are going to have such fun trying to decipher it when I link it in the chat later for you to reference. Cool. So now we're going to move on to functions. So a function, so this is the syntax for a function. Let me see. Yeah, function add num1, num2, return num1 plus num2. So this is a simple function. All it does is add two numbers together and return that value. So do you guys remember what these values are called? Arguments and parameters, the ancient fight. So these are actually the parameters. These are the arguments. Well, once we actually call it. So basically the parameters you can think of as the placeholder values, and the arguments are like actual things that you're adding. So if I wanted to do, let's see. This is going to come out with math. Yay. Cool. That is math. So basically, what a function actually is I think of it as just like a block of code that is kind of like shielded by a name. It's almost like a variable in that respect. But instead of having like, you know, var test equals hello world, we have function add parameters has this code in it. That's kind of how I think about it to help out a little bit. All it really is this block of code is shielded by this reference. So when you call, how would I call a function? By name. Yep. Add. So like down here, I can do add 3 and 6. What do you think is going to happen if I run this? Nothing. It'll be fine. You will add and not print. It will add the values but not display them. Yep. So let me comment this boy out so we can see. So it actually doesn't print anything out. What's happening is basically this code is executing. So there is a value, num1 plus num2, being held in memory somewhere, but we are not using it right now. So to use it, we'd have to do this, right? We have to console log it out. We could also do and so this will run twice. Undefined. What do I got going on there? Oh yeah, console log of a console log. Yeah, that'll happen. So if I run it with the console log, it'll print out. However, just having a console log in here isn't actually very useful for code because you have to actually return the value to do stuff with it. Let's see, a couple questions coming up. It looks like no return value. If you're using return, must console log correct. So if I wanted to, I could do this. I could do it. I could have both ways. And so now it console logs out the value and actually saves it as well in memory. So you could do that if you wanted to. This is, this is a better example of probably like console logging for debugging purposes. So if I wanted to check that my math function was doing the right thing, I could console log it out and also return it to do some math somewhere else with it. So that's cool. So let's see. And I mentioned this previously with parametric mixins, I believe, but these guys are like totally arbitrary again. So like I could do function multiply num1 num2, and I could do I'll do return num1 plus num2, or well, actually, I'm going to show you guys with this add function still. So I'm going to use this one, but I could put in strings in here. I could do hello guys. What do you guys think will happen here? Concatenate won't print. Hello guys. It'll just do it because JS is crazy. So I'm going to print it, and you guys will be amazed and shocked to see hello guys. Notice there's no space between it. If I want the space, I have to actually space inside one of them. So now we have hello guys concatenated. So concatenating is a big word, but all it means is basically taking two strings and putting them together to form one string. Yes. Yeah, so all I'm trying to say here is that these are totally arbitrary. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the order that they're in. So if I did this, then it would print out guys hello with a space. So yeah, I just wanted to demonstrate that I could name it like number or string or whatever, but whatever I put into it, it's loosely JavaScript's a loosely typed language, so I can put whatever I want into it. Of course, if I'm doing like multiplication, like something like this, and I do console log multiply hello guys, probably something substantially weirder is going to happen, right? Let's do oh, weird. I didn't think that would happen, but evidently you can multiply strings. Oh, yes, I didn't actually multiply them. That's very important. So yes, we get nan. Nan means not a number. So what that means is you try to do some kind of math operator on stuff that isn't numbers. So it'll just tell you this isn't a number, that doesn't work, don't do that. Yes. So yes, parameters, arguments, totally arbitrary. They can be whatever you want. That's the main thing to take away from this. JS said nah. Yep, basically. Cool. So does, oh, one more thing here. So if I do console.log hey and do this, what do you guys think is going to happen here? Won't reach hey, no hey, nothing after return. Okay, so you guys are mostly correct. It'll do the guys hello. It will not print the hey. So you can think of return as like the termination of your function. When you hit this return statement, it's not going to print anything that comes after that. Okay, so you know, if you have stuff like this, like other messages that you want to send or whatever, make sure that it's above the return statement. Because once this line of code finishes executing, this function's done. I could have like 500 lines of code down here and it would just never reach it. And you'd probably be really confused why your code wasn't working. So just make sure that you're not mixing up where you put your return statements. Cool. Yep. Looks like you guys are getting it. So that's good. So does anyone have any questions about this function syntax or anything about this basic function stuff so far? Cool. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to learn about functions is function expressions. So we can actually make, we can basically have functions set as variables. So I could do function expression add equals function num1, num2, return num1 plus num2. And this is totally valid. Can anyone think why this might be more useful, or why this would be something that we would even bother with? Not hoisted does not hoist. Arrow functions. Callback functions. There's a good term. More control. You can basically think of these as kind of like drag and drop things that you can reference wherever, right? So if I do, right now it looks very similar, I'll grant you, but if I do like 2 for, it'll print out just the same. So we've got 6. So it does the same math, but essentially take my word for it that this is really useful stuff that you're going to be using, I think, next Monday, or it might be this Thursday. I'd have to look at the schedule, but yeah. So these right now might not seem like super useful, but trust that they are. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Callbacks are in JS too. So, when you guys start reading ahead for the next lecture, you'll probably understand why these are a little more useful. You can basically inception functions. So, as a hint for what you can look forward to, I can put functions inside of functions. So that's fun stuff that we'll be getting into later in the week. But these are called function expressions, and that's really all I'm going to kind of go over right now. Does anyone have any questions so far about functions or function expressions? Arrow functions, I will go over those next. Do not worry. They are coming. Okay, looks like we're just memeing around. So I'm going to go on to arrow functions as requested. So what an arrow function is Basically, you can think of it as a newer way to do functions. Not everything is totally compatible with arrow functions yet. So if you find something that you know should be working, not working, and you have it written as an arrow function, consider writing it as the old style of a function with just the function keyword and the curly guys here. But a lot of people, especially in, especially in React, we use arrow functions a lot. They're becoming more and more supported with more and more things. So you'll probably see them very frequently. And it's generally expected that you'll use them in the React section. So get used to seeing them. You don't have to use them for everything yet, but just know what they are and that they exist and that you'll be using them. Tyler, my boss at work, calls them the curly boys, which I'm a big fan of. But yeah, so an arrow function syntax looks like this. So I can do const arrow. So this is looking like a function expression, right? So then I can actually do the arrow here. Well, and then we have some parameters in here. So what this is I'm basically doing a function expression here with an arrow syntax, right? So these are where you store your parameters. So like num1, num2, and then we use this arrow, and it just basically says, go into the code. So return num1 plus num2. And this should work the same as everything else. Arrow. Clear, save, run. 6. So this runs the same as the other guys too. Like I said, it's just a more modern way of syntax. Something called ECMAScript or ECMA script. You guys might have seen references to that. Basically, it's a style, it's a way of doing JavaScript. It's kind of the standard that people try to follow. So arrow functions are new in, I think they came around in ES6, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So they're kind of just a new way of doing things, like const and let are kind of replacing var. Over time, this function syntax like this will probably start getting less popular as arrow functions are fully supported and things like that. Yes, slightly shorter syntax, and there are more important aspects to it that we will discuss later on, but the arrow functions have specific reasons for existing, not just because they look cool. Do older versions of browsers not recognize arrow functions if they predate what was introduced to JS? Yeah, so some older browsers don't support various features of JavaScript, just like they don't support various features of CSS or less, or whatever preprocessors that you're using. Like some older browsers just don't support this stuff. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. On line 67, this is a plus, console log num1 plus num2. Looks good on .map, yep. For a lot of the higher order functions that you'll be using with React, and actually later on this week, you'll be using array functions a lot, array methods. So get used to seeing those. With line 87, yeah, this is const arrow equals parameters arrow and then the curly boys. Is there a specific reason for using an arrow function over a regular function? Yes, but that is not for today's lecture and would completely go over y'all's heads right now, so I'm not going to get too far into it. But trust that it is coming and we will learn about it later. Cool. You guys have any more questions, feel free to throw them out right now. Yeah. Azar has suggested the this keyword works differently with arrow functions. Most of you guys probably don't know what the this keyword is yet, though, so I'm not going to discuss it too much. Any more questions? Looks like chat's slowing down a little bit. If anything, if any more questions do come up, I will give them an answer. Cool. Okay. So let me check. When did I? Do you guys want to continue, or do you want to have a break right now? Because it's been about 25 minutes, but this is kind of heavy stuff potentially. Continue. Okay. All right. I will continue onward then. We'll have a break after this section. So this next thing that we'll introduce is objects. I might have heard the phrase that JavaScript is nothing but objects, and that is correct. You'll see just how correct that is in the coming week or so. So be comfortable with objects for sure. So here's what an object looks like. Object animal equals this. So this is just the declaration of our object. Right now, this is totally legit. I could just leave it like this and it, it exists. It's a thing. I can console log it out. Of course, it's not going to have anything in it. It's just going to console log out this empty object here. When we see these curly braces, basically know that it's an object if it's just being assigned to it this way. So this is just an empty object right now. It's called an object literal. And then the important thing about objects is this syntax. Pig. Height. A 5 foot tall pig would be kind of terrifying. 3. Weight. 250. So these are called key value pairs. So this is the key and this is the value. Oh, oops. Yes, stringify. Oopsie doopsie. Cool. So now if I do this, it's still going to come out saying object, so it won't say animal, but it'll have these key value pairs in there. Do I need a semicolon after 250? No. If you put a semicolon in here, it'll actually error out. So let's see what happens there. Uncaught syntax error, unexpected token, semicolon. So do not put semicolons inside the body. We use commas. You can have a trailing comma here. It'll be fine in most cases. Some cases it doesn't like the trailing comma, but it'll work just like for stuff like this. How come they weren't in order? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Cool. Oh yeah, it goes alphabetical. I'm not totally sure why, but I would guess that it's probably just how the compiler reads it and posts it out. Yeah, okay. That's totally valid, Matt. It's probably just a CodePen thing because I haven't noticed it previously when working in VS Code or anything like that. So this is probably just something that you would see in CodePen. Cool. So this is, like I said, these are key value pairs. These are the main thing that's important about objects. You can hold data in here and it's structured in an easily manipulatable way, if that's the word. Manipulable, I don't know, whatever that word is. So can anyone tell me how I might access just this name key? How would I console log out this name key? Dot notation, right? Animal.name. So if I do this, you get pig. Nice, cool. You guys can probably already see how this is going to be useful stuff. Just real quick, because this isn't super common, I'm going to show you guys another syntax called bracket notation. So I can do aim and this also works. You might be confused seeing the braces here, but just know if you're referencing an object, this will work. And I'll kind of go over that a little bit later. Cool. So yeah, so these are how we access the keys. So I could console log out all of them if I wanted to, right? I could just do animal dot height. Oops, console log animal dot weight. And we can just have them all consoled out there so we can see it. So those are all the separate values there. Arrays are objects with indices instead of keys. Yes, in JavaScript. That is actually something that like confused me a lot at first, but it's really easy if you think about it like this. Actually, I'll do this example. Remind me to do this example, Tyler, when we get into arrays so people can see what arrays look like before we try to compare them. Cool. So yeah, so this is what an array looks like. These are how you access the keys. And then the other thing that's cool about objects is that they come with a whole bunch of built-in methods. A method is just like a fancy name for a function that's attached to one of these. So the way that you find the list of all these functions is you go to MDN. MDN is the place to go. So if I type in MDN object, it should be the first thing that comes up. MDN is kind of the main resource for JavaScript web technology. You know, it's basically the documentation that you'll be referencing for the rest of your lives. So get familiar with it. It's pretty easy to navigate. So we can see here, this is specifically related to objects. So everything on here is for objects. So we have properties, we have methods. These properties, you guys don't know prototypes yet, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. Some of these methods are, we have object create, assign, freeze, keys, you know, we have all kinds of stuff. So just for an example, I will, let's see, show entries. Where is entries? Cool. One thing that helps me a lot too when I'm learning new functions or, you know, ones that I don't use very often, it's not super useful to read this text at first, unless you're like a textual learner, I guess, then go for it. But I like to just look at the code so I can kind of see the example and kind of wrap my brain around what it's trying to do. And then reading this will kind of give you a little bit more of an in-depth understanding, you know, if you need it. So let's check this out. So I'm just gonna grab this guy and throw it into our code. You've got an object here. This works too. It's just a different way of formatting it. So you can format it like this, which is how I prefer to do it. So you can see all the keys out in a line. It's easier to read for me. Or you can format it like this. Either one works. It's just up to you and, you know, how your boss tells you to do it, basically. Depends how many you have. Yeah. Yeah, if you have like 30 keys or something, then it would be really hard to read it this way. But we just got 2, so it's not too bad yet. Cool. So let me just run this real quick and see what happens. So we've got Baz and 42. Okay. So let me explain what's going on here. So for this object, we have a key foo with a value bar and a key baz with the value 42. We're console logging out this object, the entries of this object, and the reference to the actual object that we're going for. And this is called an index. So an index is basically just the place that it's in. So indexes actually start at 0 too. So this is index 0, and this is index 1 in this object. Yeah, and an entry is a key value pair. So what this is doing is it's just printing out index 1, basically. So we've got Baz equals 42. Does that make sense to you guys? This concept that there are these built-in functions for objects that we can use, and they just come with JavaScript. Cool. And yeah, the thing that I really want to stress is don't feel like embarrassed or bad or anything like that if you go to MDN constantly, because everyone goes to MDN constantly. I go to MDN like every day, basically, just because like it's not worth it for me to like remember the specific syntax for every method in the world. Nobody can remember all that stuff. It's way more valuable to devote your brain power to actually solving the problems instead of trying to just like memorize all these words. So don't be ashamed for referencing stuff like this. Like, at my day job, I probably spend like 50% of the time like Googling syntax and stuff like that. So it's a big part of it. Get used to it. Yeah. If you're confused about syntax, if you're confused about anything, do not feel bad for researching it. Like that's a good thing, actually. I would much rather, if we had an intern or something like that, I would much rather the intern go and spend some time Googling and try to figure it out than come to me every time they have a little question. So get in that engineering mindset of I can solve this problem by Googling it, so I'm going to do that. But yeah, so just keep in mind MDN is the main place for all, this repository of knowledge. It's kind of like the standard that people use. Yeah, as far as I know, they're the guys that handle like ECMAScript and like all these web technology standards and stuff like that. Yeah, I think I told you guys this before, but like back in the day, they used to just literally have like manuals like this thick of like all this stuff. So thank thank technology for a much easier life. Yeah, yeah. Great point. Cool. Okay. Seems like everyone's good with Googling. That's great. And one thing too, if you don't have an academic background or you haven't done stuff like this before, you might not know the most efficient ways of Googling. As a programmer, you're naturally going to get better at Googling, but I definitely recommend like looking up like a Udemy class or something like that on like Googling techniques, because you can get pretty deep into Googling, and it makes your life way more efficient if you know how to do things like Google operators and stuff like that. So if you're ever trying to min-max your your research skills, definitely give those courses a look out. Cool. So let's get back in here. So we've got this one. I guess I'll just do one more example guy here. So what's a good one? Object values. Cool. So I'll grab this guy, throw this in here. Cool. Now let's run it and see what it does. So I forgot to console these out, but so what this does is it just prints out all the values, right? So we've got this guy, some string, 42, and false. It just printed out everything. So you can see these built-in functions are super useful. You'll be using them, a lot. You might not use them every day, but you'll be using them enough. So there's just one more example there. I'll put this under here. Expected value. some string. Cool. So does anyone have any questions about objects so far? Do entries always stay in the order you put them in? It depends on the browser. Like I think Matt said earlier, CodePen does like weird stuff and orders them in a different way, it seems. VS Code, they remain in the same order. I'm like 90% sure. Yeah, it's just, it totally depends on what you're using. I'm not a D&D nerd. I've never found a group that stayed together for more than like a month and a half, but I have been a semi-competitive World of Warcraft player since like 2006. So yeah, I'm kind of a nerd. Um, could I tell it to print at index 1? Sure. Let me uncomment. Well, uncomment this one where we're using indexes. So this one is printing at index 1. I assume that you meant 0, so I'll show you index 0. Oh, what's going on here? Oops, that's what's going on there. I uncommented an actual comment. So now we get foobar. Foobar is the first entry. So at index 0, we get the first entry. Just remember, it's like computers start at 0 for the most part. I'm not going to tell you guys what faction I play because that'll make half the class mad at me. Is there any more questions about actual code, guys? So I don't want to waste people's time. We can talk after though. Does that mean that the dot entries won't give the same results in different browsers? I'm pretty sure that these actual functions will give the same results because that would really mess with you if that changed across browsers. Even though, like for example, with this one, let's actually give it a try. Let's change these around out of alphabetical order. So comment that back out. Run 42 some string false. See, yeah, it doesn't actually reorder it in the method here. It keeps it in the same order because that would really mess people up. Okay, cool. Looks like all the questions are all set. Cool. So now I am going to actually institute a break. So go take 5 minutes. It's a lot of stuff, guys. I'm very proud of you guys for doing your pre-class work and being so up to speed on everything, but it's a lot of info to take in. So go take a break. Cool. Welcome back to our final segment of the night. Any questions that you guys have, post them in the chat now, or hold your peace for like 20 minutes. Is Vanilla.js kind of like the box model, and then React and the frameworks are going to feel like Flexbox? Or does the average front-end engineer still use plenty of Vanilla.js? That's a pretty good comparison, yeah. Vanilla.js is, you're just figuring out kind of like how things work. You know, you're learning about margin, you're learning about borders, all that stuff. And then React just gives you a whole lot more power on top of it. You know, if you're curious about what makes React or Vue or Angular or whatever other framework more powerful than just Vanilla.js, feel free to go research that. You know, obviously you guys will be getting into React in a couple weeks. I guess like a month or 2 months. Yeah, 2 months, math. But yeah, like Matt says, it's not like a totally different language or anything. You know, you're using vanilla JavaScript in it. You're just adding more stuff on top of it. Is Node a different animal again? Yes. Yep. So Node is still JavaScript. You know, everything that you're going to learn in the front end and back end, you know, the full stack web curriculum at Lambda is going to be some kind of JavaScript. You know, they're basically just different ways of doing, of using the same language. You know, it's like English, you have all kinds of different accents. It's kind of like that, but for code, you can do slightly different things with slightly different varieties. Doing different things with it because you're not just manipulating a browser. For Node, yeah, there's like a lot of stuff that goes into Node. I'm not going to explain what React is yet. You guys will get into that later. Does JavaScript have some string formatting like Python's dot format? Yeah, there's all kinds of different string formatting things for JavaScript too. Yeah, template literal. Yep, we'll get into that stuff as the days go by. So don't worry. Cool. Any more questions about you know, whatever we've gone over so far? Cool. Everyone seems to be doing good so far. So I will jump on into arrays. Cool. Okay. Let me comment this boy out. So arrays. Can anyone tell me in like layman's terms what an array is, or like kind of like what it does? It's a list. Yep. List. Perfect. So you can think of arrays as just like a list of some data. So what that looks like is whenever you see these square brackets, for the most part, you're going to be dealing with arrays. So I can just throw like whatever stuff in here. So I could just have a couple numbers, and that's an array. You know, arrays are generally going to be set to a variable. Const array equals this array. So if I console.log it out, clear, save, run. We just get this whole list back, right? I mentioned indexes earlier. Can anyone think of how I might access number 3, for example? Cool, let's give it a try. Array at index 2. Well, we've got 2. I wanted to get 3, but I think you guys know what's going on. So remember, we start our index at 0, right? So this is index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2, this is index 3. Yeah, I meant the actual literal number 3. So we can get number 3, which is the 4th element, by putting index 3 in there. So now we get 3 logged out, right? Cool. I should do ABCD. Okay, that might be helpful. Yes. B, C, D. Cool. And so now we might see that a little more clearly. So this should log out our D. Yep. Cool. An array is an object that stores several key value pairs, a lot like the function you commented out. Nearly everything in JavaScript is an array. I would say that it's the opposite of that. I would say that everything in JavaScript is an object. Arrays in JavaScript are actually a subtype of an object. So, you know, if you're thinking in everything is something, think that everything is an object. Cool. So this is just the basic syntax and how you would access one of these guys. So let's look at MDN again and see what some cool stuff we can do is. So let me find, probably just do array. Cool. Okay. So we got some properties, and we actually have some properties we can use because there's one that isn't a prototype. So let's look at length. So we can do array name.length, and it'll give us back how long the array is. So if we go into this example here, we do console log array.length, what are we going to get back? 4. Yep, good stuff. So we'll get back 4 because there's 4 things in our array here. A couple fun things that you can do with length. Actually, why do you guys think that it would be important to know the length of an array? Or what are some cool things that you guys think that could be done with this? Loops. Yep, loops are a big thing. Iterating, loops. Yep. Cool. Add them together with reduce. Yeah, you can. That's definitely a usage of an array. Add items to the end. Yeah, finding the end of something. A nifty way of finding the end of something is array.length -1. Run it and see. Oh yeah. Array.length. Oops. Yeah, that's just 3, right? But so if I do this array and then set this as the actual index value, we get D. So we get this last index here. So that's like a nifty trick that you can use with length. That's super useful. And it's super useful because it doesn't matter how much stuff we add onto it, right? It's always going to find the last thing. So I could have E and F. And if I run it again, it's still the last one, right? So that's awesome. So we can always find the end really easily. Comparisons, if statements. Yep. All these things are good stuff to do with arrays. Nice. Does array.to equal array index 2? No. That is not syntax which exists, but we can check it out. I'm curious what error it's going to throw. Okay. Interesting. Let me clear this out and run it again. Missing paren after argument length. Okay. Yeah, I think that just means the compiler is really confused. But yeah, you have to use bracket notation to get the index of an array. Cool. So that's fun. Does anyone have any questions about this before I go over some examples of array methods? Cool. Alrighty, so we'll go back into here. And we'll find some cool stuff to play with. Do pop. I'll show you guys, yeah, I'll show you guys push and pop. Cool. These ones specifically, like you'll use this stuff a lot. So get familiar with this page for sure. Like I would highly recommend just like going through and just like looking at them so that you kind of know what's available to you already, just like built in. You know, even if you're not going to remember all the syntax, obviously, but knowing that you can go down and, you know, see what the keys are, or knowing what pop and push do, that'll be useful for you. Cool. So let's grab one of these. Actually, I'll grab this whole thing so we can see a couple. So var plants. So what popping does, if we look at this, pop removes the last method from an array and returns that element. This method changes the length of the array. Cool. So we can actually check that out. We save and run this. This will actually return tomato if we return the value of it, right? Because that's the thing that's being popped off the end here. So when we console log it out here, you know, the array is basically transformed into that. Sweet. And then if we do it again, we got rid of kale also. So we got rid of two things, and now it's, you know, now the array is only a length of 3, right? So you can see kind of how like length and these different array methods interact with each other, and how you might want different things back from functions, because, you know, like with this, we can see what we're actually popping off by console logging it out here, right? Or here rather. So we can console log this and see that we get the tomato is being popped off. You guys are funny. So there's some examples of pop. Comment this out. And push is kind of like the opposite. Push is adding stuff. So push method adds one or more elements to the end of an array and returns a new length of the array. So throw this guy in here. Comment this out for now. Clear, save, run. So now we've got this first one here, we're console logging out the new length. So if I do console.log animals.length up here, and then run it again, we'll see that it's 3 first, right? And then we push cows. This returns that new length, and then we get the array back with cows on the end. And then we can do also, we can also add chickens on here just for fun. So now we've got cows and chickens. So you guys can probably see how useful this stuff is. Not having to write your own push method is great. Could you dot pop into a variable? Yep. Yeah, that's some of the power that that these variables hold, you know, or that these methods hold rather. So you can save all these different things as variables as you go, if you want to have, you know, specific references to these values as you get rid of them or add them on, or, you know. If no items remain, will it return null? Let's see. I will get this guy back. So if we do this, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then console log plants, it'll just return an empty array, right? So we could, if we wanted to, we could push something back on here. So we could do plants.push fern. Oops, I have to actually console log it out again, right? I'm so silly. So now we got fern in there, so it's not empty anymore. Cool. Push returns the new length. Yes, push returns the new length. Cool. Does anyone have any questions about this stuff so far? And really that's pretty much all the actual content for the night. So if you have any questions about anything that has happened tonight, ask them now, because I'm going to go over the project a little bit before we go. If you use something like animals.pushmouse.shiftDuck, will it slow down the load time? Yeah, I mean, doing more stuff will always slow you down just by the virtue that you're doing more stuff. So, you know, when you're optimizing verse on different lines, verse on different lines. Oh, are you asking like if chaining functions is like a good thing to do? Yeah, you're going to chain functions all the time. Like it's not, if it does slow you down, it's like negligible. But yeah, chaining functions is very common. So don't be surprised when you see stuff like that. Yep, no worries. I feel like I have to keep that a mystery for now, Eli. But yeah, so if there's no more questions about the code, I'm going to just go over the project a little bit. And I'll also give this to you guys, even though it's just like a whole bunch of console logs. Here. There you go. Do not show me that regex. I hate it. Regex is scary. Yes. It's just not my thing, man. Cool. Yeah, okay. I'm actually not going to bother commenting that out because you guys already grabbed it. So let me go over the homework for tonight. So where are we? Here we go. Project JS1. Cool. So basically for tonight, you're going to do the same you've been doing with Git, set it up like we've been going through. And tonight's homework is kind of a little bit like the Lambda challenge. It's kind of just like a bunch of little mini, mini assignments where you use array methods, reuse the object methods, you set objects up, you set arrays up, and use variables, and basically you'll touch all the stuff that we went over tonight in a couple of short little assignments. So we can just take a look at these real quick. So we've got one for objects. So basically we want you to put together some objects and manipulate the data in there a little bit. Console log stuff out. As I said before, console log everything, guys, especially going into JavaScript. It's really important to know where your data is and where, if something's going wrong, it's really easy to figure out where it is if you're console logging things. I'm just going to continue to stress it because, especially as a former like Flex PM, a lot of the folks that that go to Flex, it's for silly things, like they make a mistake and they don't realize it because they're not console logging something out. So, it's super important to be able to debug, and they will, console logs never get old. Cool. Yeah. So, manipulating objects, doing, adding things to objects, adding functions into objects. Yep, all kinds of cool stuff. And then function conversion. So this is taking these old function syntax and changing them into arrow functions. So that's fun. And then this arrays assignment here. So we have this big old array with all these cars in it, and you're going to be looping through and console logging stuff out. That scared me. I think that was my dog. Yeah. Wow, that spooked me. Sorry. So yeah. So basically, we're just doing a couple little challenges, and yeah, you should, if you need any help setting up your IDE or anything, your PMs are going to be there for sure. especially since we're doing JS really for the first time. You guys might need some help setting stuff up. You can check your work in the console with this index.html. If you just drag it into the console, you'll be able to inspect in here. So I guess I can show you that real quick. Let me grab this down. Git. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Git clone. Okay. Oh, actually, CD assignments, ls. Should we still use VS Code if that's what we use now to open the assignment files? Yes. I think I said it before, but we at Lambda generally recommend that you stick with VS Code. You know, if you're coming into it with experience in another IDE like Sublime or Atom or whatever, that's fine. But most of the instructors use VS Code, so it'll be easier to debug if you need help with it. So if I grab this, there, downloads. Where did I actually download this to? Man, I'm so silly. Where is my root? And I don't even know where the default root is on here. That's funny. Let's see. Nice. Okay. Cool. So I can just do it in here. So I can do this, and I can check my work in here in this console. So see, here's a console log coming out from the code there. Yeah, I should probably update it. Yeah, so if you just drag it in here, you can check it in here. You can also open a terminal up in here. So this is a terminal as well that you can use. Just, you know, obviously make sure you're in the right spot. I updated my Chrome. Look, my Chrome is updated. Come on. So yeah, so here's how you'll check your work. Either one of those ways is fine. But yeah, we, like I said, console log a lot. Does anyone have any questions about this or anything that went on tonight? You guys sure? It's your last shot for questions, from me at least until Thursday. Can we use the debug console in VS Code? Yeah, whichever terminal you're most comfortable with is fine. Yeah. My dog. You guys are free to go if you're good. If you want to see my dog, I guess I'll go grab my dog for you. Yeah. Okay. I'll be right back.